Think about the last time you were at a dinner party.
Oh, yeah.
Or, a networking event, or maybe just a first date.
The absolute worst.
Right. And at some point, usually right after you've totally exhausted the topic of, like, what you do for a living.
And how bad the traffic was on the way there?
Exactly. Someone leans in and asks the ultimate loaded question.
Here it comes.
So, what do you do for fun?
Or, what are your hobbies?
It is just the moment everyone secretly dreads.
I panic every time.
You can practically see the gears turning in people's heads, as they try to curate the perfect answer.
Yeah, because we all know it's not a neutral question.
Not at all.
We think, okay, if I say I just watch reality TV and scroll on my phone, I sound incredibly boring.
Right, but if you say you do rock climbing and read Russian literature, you sound pretentious.
Exactly. We are hyper aware that the moment we name our hobbies, we're basically handing the other person a rubric to judge our entire personality.
Yeah, we use our free time as a sort of shorthand for our moral and intellectual worth. We absolutely do.
Yeah.
And because we're so aware of that judgment, the way we talk about our hobbies in real life is, well, it's usually filtered.
It's heavily filtered.
Yeah, through layers of self-consciousness, ego, and social posturing.
We don't just say what we do, we perform what we do.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. Because you, our listener, sent us a piece of source material that completely strips away all of that pretension.
It really does.
It is, and I say this with immense affection, probably the most basic, unfiltered conversation about human leisure you could possibly find.
We are looking at a transcript from an English learning program today.
An entry-level one, right?
Yeah, an entry-level ESL audio lesson called LearnCast English.
Okay.
Specifically, it's a module titled Sharing Hobbies and Personal Interests.
I know. It sounds completely absurd.
It does sound a bit crazy at first.
We're going to spend this entire deep dive rigorously psychoanalyzing a fictional conversation.
Between two language learning avatars.
Right. Named Ali and Sara, whose primary goal is literally just to teach the listener words like football and book.
Yeah.
But okay, let's unpack this. Because there is a strange genius to this text.
There really is.
When you remove the complex vocabulary, when you strip away the need to sound smart or sophisticated.
What you're left with is the pure skeletal structure of human connection.
It's essentially an X-ray of social interaction.
The LearnCast host introduces Ali and Sara, and they engage in this incredibly straightforward dialogue about their free time.
Right.
But precisely because they don't have the linguistic tools to hide behind sarcasm or irony or complex rationalizations.
They end up laying bare the exact mechanisms of how we negotiate our boundaries.
Exactly. How we manage our psychological stress and how we project our future selves.
They don't just tell us what a hobby is. They map out the entire psychological landscape of why we bother doing anything at all when no one is paying us to do it.
It's fascinating.
So we're going to trace this conversation from the very beginning.
Yeah, let's look at how Ali and Sara define their free time.
The physical environments they seek out.
The way they consume media.
The hidden social contracts they're making with each other.
And finally, the surprisingly vulnerable space of the things they are terrible at.
Right. So the LearnCast program actually sets the stage for all of this before the characters even speak.
Yeah, the narrator comes in and provides a foundational definition.
What do they say?
The text says, quote, "A hobby is something you like to do in your free time."
Which seems super obvious.
It does. But then it attaches 3 specific criteria.
Okay.
It says hobbies can be fun, relaxing, and helpful for learning new skills.
It's a 3-pronged framework, and we really need to sit with those 3 words for a minute.
Fun, relaxing, learning.
Right. Because in our modern culture, especially with the rise of the side hustle, we've kind of warped the definition of a hobby, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. Everything has to be a pathway to monetization.
Or aggressive self-improvement.
Yeah. If you knit, someone tells you to open an Etsy shop.
Right. Or if you like taking photos, you should start a wedding photography business.
We've heavily skewed toward that third prong, the learning new skills part.
But we've weaponized it into productivity.
Exactly. What the LearnCast text does here is brilliantly democratic.
So,
it places fun, the pure, unadulterated pursuit of joy, with no ulterior motive, on the exact same level of importance as learning new skills.
I love that.
And it adds relaxing, the active pursuit of recovery, as the vital bridge between the two.
It's proposing a balanced psychological diet.
We need joy, we need decompression, and we need growth.
And right after laying out this philosophy, The LearnCast host gives the listener an instruction.
Listen carefully, repeat after them, and try to understand every sentence.
Obviously, that's advice for learning English grammar.
Sure.
But I think it's the perfect mandate for us today in this deep dive.
Definitely.
If we genuinely try to understand why Ali and Sara are saying these specific sentences, we start to see how they're desperately trying to fulfill those three needs.
Fun, relaxation, and growth.
Exactly. So let's apply that mandate to Ali.
Early in the text, Ollie says, quote, I like playing football and watching movies.
And Sara asks if he plays every day.
Right. And he replies, no, I do not play every day. I play 2 times a week.
This is where I start to see a contradiction, or at least a really fascinating friction in the definition of a hobby.
What do you mean?
Well, think about a hobby as a personal battery charger.
Okay.
You plug yourself in to recharge from the drain of your job, your obligations, your daily stress.
Right. The text explicitly said hobbies should be relaxing.
But Ali is choosing to go out and run around a pitch for 90 minutes.
Getting tackled, sprinting until his lungs burn.
Exactly, dealing with the stress of competition and sweating through his clothes.
And he does this twice a week.
So how does intense physical exhaustion fit into the criteria of relaxing?
It forces us to redefine what relaxation actually means in a modern context.
Right?
We have a tendency to conflate relaxing with being purely sedentary.
Like laying on a couch, barely moving.
Yeah. But for a lot of people, especially those whose daily lives might involve sitting at a desk, staring at a screen.
Which is most of us.
Right, and dealing with abstract, low-level anxiety. The kind of stress that just hums in the background all day.
I know that.
Sedentary relaxation doesn't actually work for that. If you just sit on the couch, your brain keeps spinning.
The anxiety just has a quieter room to echo in.
That is a great way to put it. So active leisure, like playing a competitive game of football, becomes the ultimate psychological reset.
Because he has to focus.
When Ali is on that pitch, he has to be hyper-present.
Right.
If he's tracking a ball moving through the air, anticipating the movements of the opposing team, managing his physical stamina,
He physically cannot ruminate on whatever stressed him out earlier that day.
the cognitive load of the game demands 100% of his attention.
It's the concept of flow.
Exactly.
He's trading the chronic, low-grade mental stress of daily life for acute, temporary physical stress.
And when the game is over, the physical exhaustion acts as a kind of sedative.
He's burned off the excess adrenaline.
Right. So by totally exhausting his body, he's actually enforcing a state of quiet on his mind.
It's a highly active, highly aggressive form of battery charging.
It is, and you see the complete opposite approach immediately after.
When Ali asks Sara what she's doing right then,
Yeah. She says, quote, I am sitting at home and thinking about my hobbies.
which is such a funny meta sentence.
It really is.
Her hobby in that exact moment is contemplating her hobbies.
She is existing in the most passive, mentally internal state imaginable.
It creates a brilliant contrast.
You have Ali, who seeks out kinetic, high-stakes environments to decompress.
And Sara, who retreats into physical stillness and internal reflection.
It challenges you to look at your own mechanisms for recovery.
Right. Do you need to exhaust yourself to find peace? Or do you need complete stillness to hear yourself think?
And it isn't just about what they are doing, it's deeply tied to where they're doing it.
The physical spaces they choose are just as important as the activities themselves.
Let's look at the geography of their joy.
Because the text introduces a specific location that both characters use, but for completely different psychological reasons.
The park.
The park.
Ali tells Sara, quote, I play in the park near my house with my friends.
And Sara's response is immediate. She says, that is great. I like the park too, but I go there to read.
Same grass, same trees, same benches.
But they're extracting entirely different utilities from that exact same plot of land.
The park functions here as the ultimate blank canvas of public infrastructure.
What do you mean by blank canvas?
Well, it doesn't impose a specific behavior on the people who enter it.
Oh, right.
If you walk into a library, the architecture and the social norms demand quiet reflection.
Or if you walk into a nightclub, the environment demands kinetic energy.
Exactly. But a park is just space.
It's an operating system.
An operating system.
Yeah, think of the park as the underlying OS, like Windows or Mac OS.
Okay, I like this.
Ali and Sara are just bringing their own software to run on it.
Right.
Ali boots up a multiplayer action game that requires a massive amount of RAM and network connectivity.
He brings his friends, he brings a ball, he brings noise and competition.
Exactly. And Sara boots up a quiet, offline word processor.
She brings a book and finds a quiet corner under a tree.
The operating system handles both perfectly.
It does. But Sarah's choice to run that specific software in the park is worth deeper analysis.
Why is that?
Later in the dialogue, she reveals a crucial detail about her reading habits. She says, quote, "I read every day before I sleep."
Which means she is reading in her bed,
Inside her house.
in a highly controlled, private environment.
Yes. So we know she doesn't need the park to read.
Right. She has a perfectly functional, quiet space at home.
Yet she makes a point to tell Ollie that she actively goes to the public park to engage in this deeply solitary activity.
Why leave the controlled comfort of your house, deal with the weather, the bugs, and the unpredictability of the public, just to sit and stare at a piece of paper by yourself?
It's the need for ambient life, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. If you're home alone, silence can sometimes feel heavy.
It can feel very isolating.
But if you take your book to the park, you get the rustling of the leaves,
The distant shout of someone like Ollie playing football.
dogs barking.
You get all the sensory proof that the world is alive and moving around you without actually having to interact with it.
It's a form of what psychologists call body doubling, right?
Yeah.
Or ambient socialization.
Yes, exactly. You are alone, but you are alone together with the city.
For Sarah, reading in bed is a functional tool to transition into sleep.
It's a wind-down mechanism.
But reading in the park is an active event.
The environment changes the texture of the hobby.
The sunlight, the breeze, they become active participants in her experience of the story.
She's curating a specific headspace by manipulating her geography.
Okay, but then the text throws a curveball.
It does. They bring up a second location and their reactions are completely unified.
Sarah asks Ollie, "Do you like traveling?"
And Ollie responds, "Yes, I like going to the beach."
Sarah lights up and says, "I like the beach too. It is beautiful and relaxing."
And Ollie confirms, "Yes, I enjoy the sound of the sea."
The contrast between their relationship to the park and their relationship to the beach is phenomenal.
It really is. In the park, they are diametrically opposed in their behavior.
The park requires them to bring an activity to make the space valuable.
They have to do something.
But the beach is entirely different.
Mm.
They are completely aligned because the beach doesn't require them to bring any software at all.
The beach is an overpowering sensory environment. It provides its own utility.
It's the ultimate plug-and-play destination.
Think about what they highlight.
Sarah says it's beautiful and relaxing, a purely visual and emotional response.
And Ollie says he enjoys the sound of the sea, a purely auditory response.
Neither of them mention swimming or playing volleyball or building sandcastles.
They are drawn to the beach simply to exist in its presence.
Because the environment does the heavy lifting for them.
The rhythmic sound of waves crashing is practically a biological hack for the human nervous system.
Oh, absolutely. It lowers your heart rate.
It mimics the rhythmic sounds we hear in the womb.
The vast visual horizon of the ocean gives the eyes a place to rest without having to focus on near-field objects like screens or books.
You just show up and the environment washes over you.
You don't have to produce the relaxation, you just have to receive it.
It really makes you evaluate the spaces you spend your free time in.
If your current hobbies feel like a chore, maybe you don't need a new hobby.
Right. Maybe you just need to take your current hobby to a different physical location.
Or find an environment like the beach that forces your brain to power down.
Which naturally leads us to look at the actual content they're consuming when they do power down.
We've looked at their physical spaces. Now we need to look at their digital and mental spaces.
How do they consume media, and what does that tell us about their daily rhythms?
Let's lay out the raw data from the text first.
Okay.
Sarah's media diet seems very structured. We know she reads simple stories and short novels every day before she sleeps.
And she mentions that on the weekends she watches comedy movies.
And Ollie's media diet.
Ollie is much more of a grazer.
A grazer, yeah.
He watches action and comedy movies, he plays simple games on his phone.
And he listens to music every day.
When you put those two profiles next to each other, you see two completely different strategies for emotional regulation throughout the day.
Sarah's approach is highly ritualized and compartmentalized.
Yes. She uses media as a definitive punctuation mark.
Reading is the period at the end of her daily sentence.
It happens at a specific time, before sleep, tied to a specific biological function.
The weekend comedy movie is a scheduled event, likely a reward at the end of the work week.
She has very clear boundaries around her escapism.
She enters the world of the novel or the movie, stays there for a designated time, and then leaves.
Ollie, on the other hand, weaves his media consumption into the fabric of his day.
He plays simple games on his phone.
The combination of the word simple and the device phone implies mobility and brief bursts of attention.
He's not blocking out 2 hours to sit in a dark room and play a complex console game.
No, he's pulling his phone out while waiting for a bus or standing in line.
Or taking a 5-minute break from work.
His media acts as commas and semicolons.
They're micro-escapes, little hits of dopamine to keep him going.
And neither approach is inherently wrong, but they reveal a lot about how they manage stress.
Sara saves it up and deals with it in one big scheduled release.
Ali vents it constantly in tiny increments.
But wait, I want to zero in on a specific interaction they have about this media consumption.
Oh, what caught your eye?
Well, it really rubbed me the wrong way, or at least it triggered a thought about how we judge each other.
Okay.
When Sara tells Ali that she reads simple stories every day before sleep, Ali immediately praises her.
He says that is a very good habit.
It's a standard societal compliment.
Right.
But think about what we just discussed regarding their diets. Let's call it the nutritional diet of the brain.
I like that.
Society immediately categorizes reading as a good habit. Ali doesn't even question it.
Even though Sara explicitly says she's reading simple stories.
Right. She's not reading heavy, dense philosophy. She's reading for light entertainment.
Meanwhile, Ali is playing simple games on his phone for light entertainment.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Why does reading a simple romance novel or basic thriller get elevated to the status of a good habit?
A virtuous activity that deserves praise.
While playing a simple puzzle game on a phone is culturally dismissed as just killing time or even a bad habit.
Aren't they both just accessible, low-barrier forms of escapism?
That is a profound question about the hierarchy of media.
And Ali is reflecting a deeply ingrained cultural bias here without even realizing it.
The written word has centuries of prestige attached to it.
Historically, literacy was a barrier to entry. If you were reading, you were engaging in an elevated intellectual pursuit.
Even today, the physical act of reading requires sustained attention.
You have to decode symbols, hold characters in your working memory, and internally generate the imagery.
Because it requires active cognitive participation, society venerates it.
We assume that any time spent looking at paper is time well spent.
Even if the content of the paper is essentially junk food for the brain.
Exactly. Conversely, digital screens have only been ubiquitous for a few decades.
And they are associated with distraction, passive consumption, and algorithms designed to addict us.
Tapping a screen to clear colored blocks in a puzzle game is viewed as vacant.
But from a neurological standpoint, Ali playing a spatial puzzle game on his phone might be giving his brain the exact same necessary cognitive decompression
The exact same break from reality.
that Sara gets from her simple novels.
It's the bias of the medium over the message.
If someone says, I spent 4 hours this weekend reading, we say, wow, good for you.
But if someone says, I spent 4 hours this weekend playing a phone game, we think, what a waste of time.
But Ali is using his phone game as a utility, just like Sara uses her book.
And we see that utility mindset perfectly illustrated when they discuss music.
This is where they find massive common ground.
Ali mentions he listens to music every day. He says, I like calm music and sometimes pop music.
Sara agrees enthusiastically. I like calm music too. It helps me relax.
And then Sara asks the classic icebreaker question.
Do you have a favorite singer?
Ali's answer is incredibly telling. He says, not really. I like many singers.
And Sara instantly agrees, me too. I do not have just one favorite.
This stood out to me so much.
Why is that?
Because if you think back to how people consumed music a few decades ago, your favorite band was your entire identity.
Oh, absolutely.
If you were a punk rocker, you wore the leather jacket, you hung out with the punk kids, you only listened to punk.
Your favorite singer defined your tribe.
Music was an allegiance.
Yes. But Ali and Sara don't view music as an identity or an allegiance.
They view music as a purely pluralistic utility.
They are curating moods, not pledging loyalty to an artist.
It reflects the streaming era perfectly.
We have access to the entire history of recorded audio in our pockets. Why limit yourself to one singer?
Ali uses pop music when he needs energy. Maybe when he's getting ready to go play football.
And he uses calm music when he needs to decompress.
Sara explicitly states she uses calm music as a tool to relax.
They aren't putting on an album to worship an artist. They are applying an audio filter to their nervous system.
They are acting as their own internal DJs, mixing the tracks of their day to maintain emotional equilibrium.
Which is a fascinating skill.
And it makes you wonder, if you're listening to this right now, do you judge your own media diet too harshly?
Do you feel guilty for playing that phone game when you quote-unquote should be reading a book.
And how are you using music? Are you using it to artificially pump yourself up for a job you hate?
Or to calm yourself down from a commute that stresses you out.
And perhaps more importantly, who are you doing all of this with?
Because our hobbies don't exist in a vacuum.
They are deeply entangled with the people in our lives.
Which brings us to the social architecture of their free time.
We know where they go, we know what they consume, but the text takes a really sharp pivot into evaluating the value of other people.
Ali initiates this transition. He asks Sarah about her movie habits. Do you watch alone or with your family?
Sarah says, I usually watch with my family. It is more fun.
And Ali seizes on this. He makes a bold, declarative statement.
He says, I agree. Watching with others is better.
Watching with others is better. That is a massive philosophical claim hidden inside a simple vocabulary lesson.
It really is. Because logically, the movie doesn't change.
The script is the exact same.
The cinematography, the runtime, the jokes in the comedy movie Sarah is watching, they are identical whether you are sitting in a room by yourself or packed on a couch with 5 relatives.
So why is it definitively better for them?
Because they are utilizing other human beings as emotional multipliers.
It's the laugh track phenomenon, but applied to genuine human connection.
If you watch a comedy alone, you might smile, you might exhale out of your nose a bit.
But if you watch that exact same joke with someone you love, and they burst into laughter,
you are biologically wired to laugh with them.
empathy kicks in. The joy becomes contagious and recursive.
It bounces back and forth between you, elevating the baseline experience of the movie into a shared communal event.
So the hobby isn't actually watching a movie.
The hobby is experiencing my family's reaction to a movie.
Precisely. And we see this communal drive in Ali, too.
He doesn't just play football. He specifically notes that he plays with his friends.
The sport is the vehicle, but the connection is the destination.
But the text doesn't just paint this rosy, unrealistic picture where everyone holds hands and does everything together.
There's a moment of deep pragmatism that I absolutely love.
Ali asks Sarah, do your friends share your hobbies?
Sarah's response is so grounded. She says, some of them do and some do not.
And Ali says, that is normal.
To which Sarah replies, yes, everyone is different.
This is such a healthy, mature realization.
Think about how much pressure we put on our friendships, especially when we're younger.
We expect our best friend to be a mirror image of us.
We want them to love the exact same music, want to watch the exact same movies, and want to do the exact same activities.
If they don't, we feel a sense of betrayal.
We want a social monolith.
But Sarah has realized that expecting one person or one group of people to fulfill all of your leisure needs is impossible and unfair.
She's decentralized her social expectations.
She has a diversified portfolio of friends.
Exactly. She has her family for watching movies.
She probably has a specific group she talks to about her books.
And she has friends who don't share any of her hobbies, but perhaps they offer great emotional support or a totally different perspective on the world.
By accepting that everyone is different and that it's normal for friends not to overlap with your hobbies, she protects her friendships from unnecessary strain.
Okay, I agree with all of that, but I have to call out a massive hypocrisy in this conversation.
Ooh, a hypocrisy. Or at least a major blind spot.
Let's hear it.
Ali just declared, as an absolute law of the universe, watching with others is better.
Right. They are both praising the communal experience.
They are validating each other's social connections. But if experiencing things with others is always better, if it's the ultimate amplifier of joy, why does Sarah actively isolate herself in a public park to read a novel alone?
And why does Ali purposefully retreat into his phone to play solitary single-player games?
They are championing connection verbally, but their behavior proves they harbor a deep, unacknowledged need for total isolation.
That is the tension at the heart of the modern social battery. And it's incredibly common.
We verbally champion connection because society rewards us for being extroverted and community-minded.
Saying I love being with my family is a socially bulletproof statement.
But you're entirely correct. Their actions betray a different reality.
They need to escape the crowd they just claim to love.
Yes, because communal joy, even when it's wonderful, is inherently taxing.
It requires a performance.
If Sarah's watching a movie with her family, she has to be on.
If a family member asks a question about the plot, she has to answer.
If they laugh, she feels the social pressure to engage.
Shared experiences require an exchange of energy.
It's an active transaction.
Exactly. Solitary hobbies, however, like reading alone under a tree or swiping blocks on a phone are non-transactional.
They require zero social performance.
You don't have to react to anyone. You don't have to monitor anyone else's mood.
It is pure selfish consumption.
And I mean selfish in the best possible way, the preservation of the self.
So when Ali says walking with others is better, what he actually means is watching with others provides a higher peak of joy.
I absolutely cannot sustain that peak at all times, so I need to go play Candy Crush in the corner for 20 minutes so I don't lose my mind.
Precisely. The solitary activities are the baseline.
They are the recovery periods that allow Ali and Sara to recharge their social batteries enough to actually enjoy the communal activities later.
It's a delicate, interconnected ecosystem.
Which asks a really hard question of anyone listening.
What does your ecosystem look like?
Are your hobbies primarily tools to build bridges to other people? Or are they walls?
Are they designated boundaries you've constructed to protect your alone time from a world that constantly demands your attention?
And are you honest with yourself about which one you actually need right now?
It's all about balance. But honestly, as fascinating as all their current habits are, the part of this dialogue that completely blew me away wasn't about what they do.
It was about what they can't do.
Which brings us to the final, and I think most profound layer of this text.
The bonding power of vulnerability and the psychology of aspiration.
This is where the conversation transcends a simple exchange of facts and becomes a true masterclass in psychological safety and relationship building.
Right in the middle of listing all the things they're great at and enjoy, Ali throws out a wild card question.
He asks, do you like drawing or painting?
And Sara gives a remarkably blunt answer. She doesn't hedge. She just says, no, I am not good at drawing.
You have to appreciate the risks Sara is taking in this specific context.
They are in the getting to know you phase.
This is the phase where everyone is trying to put their best foot forward, projecting competence and well-roundedness.
To bluntly admit a lack of skill, to say I am not good, is a micro moment of intense vulnerability.
She is exposing a flaw in her armor.
And what does Ali do? He doesn't say, oh, really? Drawing is so easy?
He doesn't offer unsolicited advice.
He instantly catches her. He says, that is okay. I am not good at drawing either.
It's a brilliant, empathetic reflex.
It's a textbook demonstration of psychological safety. By immediately sharing his own identical flaw, he normalizes her inability.
He levels the playing field.
Yes. He proves to her that this conversation is not a competition.
They aren't trying to out-hobby each other.
Their shared lack of skill. The fact that neither of them can draw actually becomes a stronger bonding moment than if they both enjoyed it.
It creates an us-against-the-world dynamic. We are the people who can't draw.
It's a relief. The pressure deflates.
And you can see how this psychological safety empowers them in the very next exchange.
Because the pattern repeats, but the dynamic shifts.
Sara asks Ali, do you cook?
And Ali, emboldened by their earlier honesty, admits, no, I do not cook.
But then he adds a crucial modifier. He says, but I want to learn.
Now, this is different from the drawing example. Here, they don't share a mutual inability.
Sara does know how to cook.
She mentions she cooks simple food like rice and pasta. She is the expert in this microdynamic, and Ali is the novice.
This is the danger zone in any conversation.
When one person knows how to do something and the other doesn't, it's so easy for the expert to become condescending, or for the novice to feel ashamed.
But Sara navigates it beautifully.
Instead of judging his lack of life skills, she builds a bridge. She says, you should try. Cooking is fun.
She uses the F word, fun.
She circles all the way back to the very first requirement of a hobby from the LearnCast introduction.
She doesn't say you should try, cooking is a necessary survival skill, or cooking will save you money.
She entices him with joy. She frames the intimidating task of learning a new skill purely through the lens of pleasure.
And it works. Ali accepts the invitation. He says, yes, I will try soon.
This introduces one of the most compelling concepts in the psychology of leisure.
The aspirational hobby.
Oh, this is my favorite part. Because a hobby isn't just a record of what you did yesterday.
It is a projection of who you want to be tomorrow.
Look at the end of their dialogue. Ali asks Sara what new hobby she wants to try.
She says, I want to learn photography.
And Ali says he wants to learn playing the guitar.
They aren't just naming activities, they are stating future identities.
Ali is saying, I want to be a musician. Sara is saying, I want to be a photographer.
They are trying on new selves.
And look at the educational philosophy that underpins this entire exchange.
When Sara mentions she is already taking photos with her phone but is still learning,
Ali offers a classic idiom, practice makes perfect.
and moments later, when Ali confesses his desire to learn the guitar, Sarah reflects that exact same philosophy back to him.
You can do it if you practice.
Practice makes perfect. You can do it if you practice.
It is the ultimate manifestation of a growth mindset.
It echoes the third and final prong of the LearnCast definition that hobbies are helpful for learning new skills.
They fundamentally believe that their current limitations are temporary states. They are not fixed.
With effort, the aspirational can become the actual.
Okay, I love the optimism of that, but I want to throw a wrench into this beautiful machinery.
I want to talk about something I call the hobby waiting room.
The hobby waiting room. Elaborate on that.
It's that psychological space between wanting to play the guitar and actually sitting down and dealing with the pain of calluses on your fingers.
It's the space between Ali saying, I want to learn guitar soon, and actually buying a guitar.
We all live in the hobby waiting room at some point.
We buy the $200 running shoes, and they sit in the box in the closet.
We buy the heavy French cookbook, and it sits on the kitchen counter looking beautiful, but we order takeout.
We acquire the artifacts of the hobby without engaging in the practice of the hobby.
Yes. And my question is the desire to learn a new hobby, is existing in that waiting room actually a hobby in itself?
Because when you buy the shoes or you research the guitar, you get a rush of dopamine.
You get to feel like a runner or a musician for an afternoon without doing any of the actual grueling work.
Are Ali and Sara just enjoying the high of the waiting room?
That is a brutally honest and very accurate critique of human nature.
The anticipation of a new hobby is incredibly seductive because it is frictionless.
In the hobby waiting room, you are full of infinite potential and you are completely free from the possibility of failure.
You're perfect in the waiting room.
Exactly. Ali hasn't hit a wrong, dissonant chord on the guitar yet because he hasn't picked it up.
He hasn't experienced the frustration of his fingers not moving fast enough.
Sarah hasn't taken a blurry, poorly composed photo that disappoints her because her photography is purely aspirational right now.
The fantasy of the hobby is often significantly more relaxing than the reality of learning the hobby.
Because the reality of learning a new skill is rarely fun or relaxing in the beginning.
It is awkward. It requires making mistakes, feeling incompetent, and exerting intense cognitive effort.
It is the opposite of a battery charger. It is a massive battery drain.
So, hovering in the aspirational phase, talking about it, planning it gives you the identity of the future guitar player without the friction of the learning curve.
Wow. We just called out ourselves and probably everyone listening right now.
If you've got a closet full of yarn for a sweater you haven't started.
Or an expensive espresso machine you don't know how to dial in.
Yeah.
You're in the waiting room.
It is a universal trap. We prefer the idea of the result over the reality of the process.
Which means this is the exact moment you need to look at your own life.
What is currently sitting in your hobby waiting room?
What is the one thing you have been telling your friends, your family, yourself that you want to learn soon, but you've been actively avoiding the discomfort of starting?
And how can you apply Ali and Sara's mantra to your own life?
How can you embrace the truth that practice makes perfect, which inherently means that the beginning will be imperfect?
How can you endure that initial frustration to eventually reach the joy, the relaxation, and the mastery that the hobby promises on the other side?
Because the secret weapon they reveal in this text isn't just willpower, it's mutual support.
Sara tells Ali, you can do it if you practice.
And Ali replies, thank you for your support.
They aren't just exchanging platitudes. They are actively helping each other build the courage to transition from potential to reality.
And that realization is the ultimate synthesis of our entire deep dive today.
Let's zoom out and look at the vast distance we've covered by analyzing this deceptively simple English learning transcript.
We started with the most basic facts imaginable.
Source material designed to teach absolute beginners how to string an English sentence together.
I like playing football. I like reading books.
A surface-level data exchange. Nouns and verbs.
But when we didn't just listen to what they were saying, but analyze why and how they were saying it, the text cracked wide open.
The conversation evolved from a sterile recitation of activities into a vibrant demonstration of human psychology.
We saw how Ali uses intense physical exertion as a mental reset, battling the paradox of active leisure
We saw Sarah manipulate the geography of a public park to curate ambient socialization while protecting her solitude.
We dissected the difference between Sarah's highly ritualized daily media wind-downs and Ali's fluid micro-escapes into digital puzzle games.
We saw how they utilize music as an emotional utility rather than a tribal identity.
We uncovered the complex social architecture of their lives, the tension between the amplifying joy of communal experiences and the desperate, hidden need to protect the social battery through isolation.
And finally, we watched them build a bridge of psychological safety, bonding over mutual flaws and encouraging each other to step out of the hobby waiting room.
As Ali himself notes near the very end of the dialogue, talking about hobbies is very fun.
And Sarah delivers the thesis statement for everything we have unpacked today. She replies, "Yes, it is. We learn more about each other."
They didn't just learn that Ali runs around a pitch or that Sarah looks at paper.
They mapped out each other's entire internal landscapes.
They learn how the other person manages stress, how they seek out joy, how they balance their need for community with their need for privacy, and who they aspire to become in the future.
All by talking about what they do in their free time.
And that leaves us with a final thought to mull over.
A complete perspective shift for the next time you find yourself at a dinner party or a networking event and you engage in what feels like trivial small talk.
When you ask someone, "What are your hobbies?" or when they ask you,
The ultimate loaded icebreaker.
recognize what's actually happening in that exchange.
You aren't asking for a list of activities. You aren't asking for a table of contents of their weekend.
You are asking one of the most profound philosophical questions one human can ask another.
How do you choose to interact with the world when no one is forcing you to?
When the boss isn't looking. When the emails are answered.
When the obligations of survival and duty are temporarily lifted, where does your mind naturally go? What does your body crave to do?
By answering that simple question, you don't just reveal what you do to kill time.
You reveal exactly who you are, what you value, and what you need to survive the friction of being alive.
It is the X-ray of the soul hiding in plain sight.
And just like this basic ESL transcript, what looks simple on the surface contains an entire universe of human complexity if you just take the time to look a little closer.
We hope today's deep dive has given you a new lens to view your own free time.
Take a hard look at your own hobbies today. Figure out what charges your battery, step out of that waiting room, and embrace the awkwardness of learning.
Stay curious and keep digging deeper.
Yeah.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.